Have you ever actually stopped to wonder what gives a government the right to, well, tell you what to do? Or better yet, what stops them from just taking total control of everything? Today, we are unpacking the ultimate blueprint of state power, constitutionalism. Welcome to this explainer. We're going to dive right in and explore exactly how modern societies structure, limit, and legitimize authority.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the architecture of power, move on to mapping the government, look at the power of the people, define the supreme law, and then wrap things up with limits and liberties. Let's get to it. So, part one, the architecture of power. Let's start at the very highest level and establish the stakes by defining what a constitution actually is. Take a look at this powerful definition by Lewis Henkin. Notice how he explicitly links government legitimacy entirely to the Constitution. I mean, think about it. A government isn't legitimate just because it has an army or waves a flag, right? It's only legitimate if it follows the specific blueprint. And, crucially, it completely outlaws unlimited power through strict checks and balances. Basically, a constitution has to be constructed in a way that prevents any single entity from holding absolute authority. And this brilliantly illustrates why these dry legal definitions actually matter to you and me. Henkin goes on to point out that constitutionalism demands a deep respect for individual rights, and, just as importantly, it requires that conformity to the Constitution is constantly monitored. It's not like you can just write down the rules, lock them in a glass display case, and call it a day. No way. Our system requires active, ongoing monitoring by the courts, the press, and, everyday citizens to ensure the government actually stays within the lines drawn by that document. All right, moving right along to Section 2, Mapping the Government. Let's see how this blueprint categorizes the actual layout of a state. Now, the crucial point here is Robert Schutz's contrast between two completely distinct ways to view a constitution. On one side, we have descriptive constitutionalism. You can think of this as just a map that tells you what's already there, literally a factual description of existing institutions and powers. But then, on the other side, we've got normative constitutionalism. This view insists that constitutions don't just describe what exists, they actively prescribe it. They dictate the exact composition and the absolute limits of those powers. It's basically the difference between a simple sketch of a building and the strict, legally binding building codes that tell you exactly how that building is allowed to be constructed. And, depending on exactly where that constitutional blueprint places the ultimate sovereign power, you get wildly different types of societies. If the authority sits with a single prince, well, you've got a monarchy. If it rests with just a select few, the lesser part of the people, you're looking at an aristocracy. But if that sovereignty is shared by all of the people, you have a democratic state. The whole nature of a country pivots entirely on this one single constitutional choice. It's really a massive game changer. Which brings us seamlessly to Section 3, Power of the People. We're going to zoom in specifically on that democratic model where sovereignty is shared by everybody. James Madison hit the nail on the head here. He captures the real engine of a republic perfectly. It's a government deriving all its power from the great body of the people. But honestly, the second half of this is the real kicker. He says power is administered by people holding office during pleasure or good behavior. What does that mean? It means they only get to keep their jobs as long as we, the voters, are actually happy with them. Or, until they break the rules. Power is just loaned by the people to these administrators. It is never permanently given away. So this gives us a really clear definition of a Republican form of democracy, bringing those abstract Madisonian ideas right down to earth. First off, it's a representative system, so definitely not hereditary. It also relies heavily on strict constitutional limits. But most importantly, it establishes rock-solid safeguards to protect our rights as citizens. It's like a carefully engineered machine, right? Designed to process the will of the people while, at the exact same time, protecting the people from the machine itself. Now, for any of these safeguards to actually mean something, the document itself needs absolute authority. Welcome to Section 4, the Supreme Law. Formal constitutionalism places these norms at the very apex of the legal hierarchy. What we mean by a formal constitution is basically the set of norms that stand at the absolute top. Because they are the highest rules in the land, they enjoy absolute legal supremacy over literally everything else. Every single piece of legislation has to bend to the Constitution, while the Constitution bends to absolutely nothing. And here is the immediate, real-world consequence of that supremacy. Every act inconsistent with the Constitution is void. Not just frowned upon or, strongly discouraged, completely 100% nullified. If a city passes a law tomorrow saying you can't criticize the mayor, boom, the Constitution instantly swats it down. The blueprint always wins. This guarantees that limits on government power remain intact no matter what crazy new legislation gets passed.
This brings us to a really vital dichotomy for understanding state power. Think of constituent powers as the architects and builders who construct the house. This is the raw, ultimate power used to actually create the Constitution from scratch. On the flip side, the constituted powers are the tenants who move in later. These are the specific government branches that were created and limited by that Constitution. Sure, the tenants can arrange the furniture however they want, but they absolutely cannot knock down the load-bearing walls. The created can never overpower the creator.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, Limits and Liberties. Let's take a look at the specific guardrails that keep those government tenants in check. Liberal democracies rely on a few genius structural features to keep tyranny at bay. First up, the separation of powers. This is all about chopping up authority into different branches so no single group holds all the cards. Second, we have ironclad protections of fundamental human rights, creating absolute no-go zones where the government simply cannot intrude. Period. And third, federal constitutionalism, which diffuses power by sharing it between national and regional levels. Guys, these aren't just boring bureaucratic features. They are quite literally the active defense systems of a free society.